In this video, we'll walk you through installing the R5 seat pedestal, from removing the factory pedestal and transferring the original seat hardware to installing and adjusting your new R5. Before getting started, make sure you have all of the supplied components and hardware, along with the tools needed for the installation. Start by removing the 6 screws securing the factory seat pedestal to the floor of the boat. Set these screws aside. You'll reuse them later when installing the R5 pedestal. With the screws removed, lift the factory pedestal out of the boat and set it aside. If your boat does not already have a clearance hole beneath the seat pedestal, install the supplied step spacer into the lower base plate. Use this as a guide to drill a 1/4-inch pilot hole in the center of the mounting location. This pilot hole will be used later to center the 2.5-inch hole saw. Next, thread the lock handle into the spring retainer pinch clamp and tighten it by hand. Once tightened, position the handle so that it faces down. To reposition the handle, simply pull outward and rotate it to the desired position. Place the upper base plate onto the top of the pedestal and secure it using the 5 supplied 1/4-inch 20 flathead screws. Apply a small amount of blue Loctite to the fasteners and torque the screws to 4 to 6 foot-pounds. Next, install the 1024 flathead screw into the outer edge of the upper base plate from the top down. This screw will interlock with the factory fore and aft seat adjuster when the seat is installed. With the decal facing upward toward the spring, thread the lower seat base plate onto the pedestal. Once the lower base plate is installed, snap the supplied Hoopster ring into the groove at the base of the shock. The Hoopster limits the amount of vertical adjustment. With the Hoopster installed, we'll make the initial base plate adjustment while the pedestal is still on the bench. Start by adjusting the base plate jam nut all the way down. There should be approximately a 1/16 to 1/8 inch gap between the base plate and the jam nut. Install the 3 Allen screws into the jam nut and lightly snug them in place. Do not fully tighten them at this time. With the screws loosely secured, rotate the entire base plate assembly upward until there is approximately a 1-inch gap between the jam nut and the bottom of the lower spring adjuster. This gives us a good starting position for installation. We'll make the final height adjustment and tighten everything once the pedestal is installed in the boat. Next, we'll transfer the factory seat slider components to the R5. Start by removing the screw that holds the seat slider assembly in place on the original seat. Once the screw is removed, slide the seat slider assembly out of the seat channel. Remove the plastic bushings from each side of the factory slider. These bushings will be reused on the R5 upper base plate. Install the bushings onto each side of the R5 upper base plate, making sure one of the bushings is positioned on the side with the 1024 screw installed earlier. Before sliding the R5 base plate into the factory seat channel, check the channel for any sharp edges. If necessary, lightly file those edges to prevent damage to the plastic bushings. With the bushings in place, slide the R5 upper base plate into the factory seat channel. Reinstall the seat slider bolt that was removed earlier. As you install it, make sure the 1024 flathead screw in the R5 upper base plate lines up with one of the slots in the factory seat rail. With the seat assembly complete, we can return to the boat and prepare the floor for the R5 pedestal. Using the 1/4-inch pilot hole drilled earlier as your center point, use a 2.5-inch hole saw to create the clearance opening for the pedestal. Before drilling, take a moment to verify that you have adequate clearance beneath the floor and that there is nothing below the mounting location that could be damaged. Floor thickness can vary considerably from one boat to another, and much of the material below the floor may be foam. Depending on the thickness, you may need to stop and clean material from the hole saw several times as you work your way down. Continue until you have enough clearance for the R5 pedestal. Typically, this requires removing material to a depth of approximately 4 inches measured from the top of the floor. Once you have the proper clearance, lower the R5 pedestal into position with the decal facing toward the rear of the boat. Align the pedestal with the original mounting holes and reinstall the 6 factory screws that were removed at the beginning of the installation. With the pedestal secured to the boat, adjust the seat to your desired height. The ideal setting will depend on your height, weight, and personal preference. But the seat can typically be adjusted between 12 and 17 inches. Once you've found the desired height, make sure the suspension links are facing toward the rear of the boat. Using the supplied 3/16-inch Allen wrench, tighten the 3 Allen head bolts in the adjuster nut to secure the pedestal at the selected height. With your boat seat suspension fully installed, it's time to hit the water.